And what I'd like to do is highlight some of the accomplishments in the last 20 months. In the first pillar, what we've been able to do around effectively managing the $80 billion portfolio has been to actually take on some of the wasteful spending within the federal government, but more importantly, making sure that we're turning around IT investments that are now producing dividends. We started by fundamentally changing the default setting in terms of how we were running IT projects. We changed the default setting from closed, secretive, and opaque to being open, transparent, and participatory. For the first time, what we did is we literally put a picture of every CIO right next to the project they are responsible for and how that project was performing in terms of cost, schedule. And we also put the name of every contractor that was working on those projects and looked at longitudinal data in terms of performance of those investments historically. But more importantly, we took actions in terms of halting $20 billion worth of financial systems that, frankly, in some cases, were not producing dividends. We looked at a financial system, for example, at the Veterans Administration. This was a project that was started in 1998 initially. They spent $249 million. The project failed. It was restarted in 2004, and then it was terminated again this year. We looked at the Department of Justice, where there was an investment that was around case management that, frankly, was years behind schedule and required a doubling of that funding, an additional $193 million to even meet the original targets. Yet technology had evolved so fast that there was a better path in terms of achieving the same objectives. With ruthless efficiency, we're going after projects that are not working and also are turning around projects to make sure that we're delivering faster. The Department of Interior, for example, there was a project called IMARS. This was an initiative to allow law enforcement officials to have a case management system that would provide them with the ability to cite people on a real-time basis rather than having to print paper, then re-enter that information, and also provide real-time analytics. And instead of waiting another 6 years, this was a project that was 6 years behind, what we were able to do is accelerate the deployment to the point where later this year, actually at the end of October, we're going to deliver functionality to 500 users. But across the board, out of that portfolio, what we're seeing is whether it's the $20 billion that we focus on in financial systems or the 26 high-priority projects that make up about $30 billion in investment, we're cracking down on waste and turning around these projects so that we produce value for the American people. But what's even more important is how we're doing that. We're soliciting ideas from the public. We're asking the American people to help us spot these projects that are not performing, taking that input and translating it into actions. In the second area that we're focused on, around efficiency and effectiveness, for example, what we've been able to do is tackle a problem that has plagued the federal government to where CIOs across the board have been too focused on infrastructure and not enough at the intersection of how the American people access services. So we recognize that there was a growth in the number of data centers. In 1998, there were about 432 data centers. We just completed a detailed inventory, and the new number is 2,094 data centers. We've already embarked on one of the largest data center consolidation initiatives in history to eliminate duplicative spending and make sure that we're moving towards agile cloud computing platforms. The Department of Homeland Security, for example, is going to go from 24 data centers down to 2 data centers, and that work is already underway. The Department of Interior is going to go from over 100 data centers to 20-plus data centers. And across the board, what you're going to see is massive reduction in the number of data centers, which is going to lower our energy footprint, make sure that the investments that we are making are not being made in the technology of the industrial era, but we're making those investments in 21st century technologies. We're also driving efficiency in terms of how people access government services, whether that's USCIS, and people want to figure out where they are in the process, whether it's for a green card or citizenship, to the point where you can track your application now in the same way you can track a FedEx package, or it's the student aid office, where now instead of having students who are applying for student aid get data from the IRS and then get the same data from the Department of Education, we've brought the two entities together, simplified the process, eliminating dozens of questions from the student aid application. And the reason that happened was because we focused on the citizen rather than focusing on the bureaucracy. It used to be that Department of Education and the IRS would say that they can't collaborate. What we found was a simple solution where we said, well, why not allow the IRS to share that data with the student, and you click one button and it will auto-populate a student aid application, providing easier access to education to millions of people around the country. Around cybersecurity, our big focus has been around moving away from a model of where we continue to invest in paper reports to a model where we're moving towards actual cybersecurity. I've cited many times the example at the State Department where over the course of 6 years, the State Department spent over $138 million on generating paper reports, with the cost per page at $1,400. Imagine if that same capital was deployed, rather than in writing reports, to actually improving cybersecurity. That is why we've invested in the Department of Homeland Security to create red teams and blue teams. And these teams would actively attack our own systems, and blue teams would actually go out there and fix those systems. But more importantly, a shift in cybersecurity to where we're actually getting real-time data analytics across the federal government in terms of how these agencies are performing when it comes to cybersecurity, rather than generating paperwork reports.